Alright, this is where this chapter gets good. I'm super excited to be bringing you part 2 of chapter 7 here, Arsene Lupin versus Herlock Sholmes. What an epic battle this has been so far. We are coming up on the end of this book, so I want to hear from you. Let me know what book you would like to hear me do next on the podcast. Always open to suggestions there. This has been quite the wild ride. We're pushing up toward 400 episodes on this podcast, which is pretty incredible, and wouldn't be here without you listening every week, so thank you so much for tuning in. And if you haven't, make sure to check out the backlist. We have, like I said, almost 400 episodes, so lots of audiobooks have been done on this podcast that you might enjoy, so go ahead and check that out. Everything from Pride and Prejudice to Treasure Island and a lot of things in between, so check that out. A lot of Sherlock Holmes stuff, so we're getting a taste of Herlock Sholmes here in this book, but if you want some more classic Sherlock Holmes, we've done 6 audiobooks, actually, of Sherlock Holmes, and I actually have a compilation that we sell on the website, so if you want to check that out, go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com, and you can purchase all 6 books basically for the price of one, which is pretty incredible if you ask me. I can't remember how many hours of audio it is, but it's a very, very big chunky book, and when it goes, everything goes to supporting the podcast and helping me continue to bring you free awesome audiobooks. But enough about that, let's figure out what happens here in the next half of this chapter. So without further ado, I give you the next installment of Arsene Lupin versus Herlock Sholmes. That night, Wilson retired with the clear conscience of a man who has performed his whole duty, and thus acquired an undoubtable right to sleep in repose. So he fell asleep very quickly, and was soon enjoying the most delightful dreams in which he pursued Lupin and captured him single-handed. And the sensation was so vivid and exciting that it woke him from his sleep. Someone was standing at his bedside. He seized his revolver and cried, "Don't move, Lupin, or I'll fire!" "The deuce! Wilson, what do you mean?" "Oh, it is you, Sholmes. Do you want me?" "I want to show you something. Get up." Sholmes led him to the window and said, "Look, on the other side of the fence." "In the park?" "Yes. What do you see?" "I don't see anything." "Yes, you do see something." "Ah, of course, a shadow. 2 of them." "Yes, close to the fence. See, they are moving. Come quick." Quickly they descended the stairs, and reached a room which opened into the garden. Through the glass door they could see the 2 shadowy forms in the same place. "It is very strange," said Sholmes, "but it seems to me I can hear a noise inside the house." "Inside the house? Impossible. Everybody is asleep." "Well, listen." At that moment a low whistle came from the other side of the fence, and they perceived a dim light which appeared to come from the house. "The Baron must have turned on the light in his room. It is just above us." "That must have been the noise you heard," said Wilson. "Perhaps they are watching the fence also." Then there was a second whistle, softer than before. "I don't understand it. I don't understand," said Sholmes irritably. "No more do I," confessed Wilson. Sholmes turned the key, drew the bolt, and quietly opened the door. A third whistle, louder than before, and modulated to another form, and the noise above their heads became more pronounced. Sholmes said, "It seems to be on the balcony outside the boudoir window." He put his head through the half-open door, but immediately recoiled with a stifled oath. Then Wilson looked. Quite close to them there was a ladder, the upper end of which was resting on the balcony. "The deuce," said Sholmes. "There is someone in the boudoir. That is what we heard. Quick, let us remove the ladder." But at that instant a man slid down the ladder and ran to the spot where his accomplices were waiting for him outside the fence. He carried the ladder with him. Sholmes and Wilson pursued the man and overtook him just as he was placing the ladder against the fence. From the other side of the fence 2 shots were fired. "Wounded?" cried Sholmes. "No," replied Wilson. Wilson seized the man by the body and tried to hold him, but the man turned and plunged a knife into Wilson's breast. He uttered a groan, staggered, and fell. "Damnation!" muttered Holmes. "If they have killed him, I will kill them." He laid Wilson on the grass and rushed toward the ladder. Too late, the man had climbed the fence and, accompanied by his confederates, had fled through the bushes. "Wilson! Wilson! It is not serious, eh? Merely a scratch?" The house door opened, and Monsieur d'Ambleval appeared, followed by the servants carrying candles.
"What's the matter?"
asked the Baron.
"Is Monsieur Wilson wounded?"
"Oh, it's nothing, a mere scratch," repeated Sholmes, trying to deceive himself. The blood was flowing profusely, and Wilson's face was livid. 20 minutes later, the doctor ascertained that the point of the knife had penetrated to within 1.5 inches of the heart. 1.5 inches of the heart? Wilson always was lucky, said Sholmes in an envious tone.
Lucky,
muttered the doctor. Of course. Why, with his robust constitution, he will soon be out again.
6 weeks in bed, and 2 months of convalescence.
Not more?
No, unless complications set in.
Oh, the devil! What does he want complications for? Fully reassured, Sholmes joined the Baron in the boudoir. This time, the mysterious visitor had not exercised the same restraint. Ruthlessly, he had laid his vicious hand upon the diamond snuff-box, upon the opal necklace, and, in a general way, upon everything that could find a place in the greedy pockets of an enterprising burglar. The window was still open. One of the window panes had been neatly cut, and in the morning, a summary investigation showed that the latter belonged to the house then in course of construction.
"Now you can see," said Monsieur d'Ambleval with a touch of irony, "it is an exact repetition of the affair of the Jewish lamp."
Yes, if we accept the first theory adopted by the police.
Have you adopted it yet? Doesn't this second theft shatter your theory in regard to the first?
It only confirms it, monsieur.
That is incredible. You have positive evidence that last night's theft was committed by an outsider, and yet you adhere to your theory that the Jewish lamp was stolen by someone in the house?
Yes, I am sure of it.
How do you explain it?
I do not explain anything, monsieur. I have established 2 facts which do not appear to have any relation to each other, and yet I am seeking the missing link that connects them. His convictions seemed to be so earnest and positive that the Baron submitted to it and said,
"Very well, we will notify the police."
"Not at all," exclaimed the Englishman quickly. "Not at all. I intend to ask for their assistance when I need it, but not before."
"But the attack on your friend?"
"That's of no consequence. He is only wounded. Secure the license of the doctor. I shall be responsible for the legal side of the affair." The next 2 days proved uneventful. Yet Sholmes was investigating the case with a minute care, and with a sense of wounded pride resulting from that audacious theft, committed under his nose, in spite of his presence, and beyond his power to prevent it. He made a thorough investigation of the house and garden, interviewed the servants, and paid lengthy visits to the kitchen and stables. And although his efforts were fruitless, he did not despair. "I will succeed," he thought, "and the solution must be sought within the walls of this house. This affair is quite different from that of the blonde lady, where I had to work in the dark on unknown ground. This time I am on the battlefield itself. The enemy is not the elusive and invisible Lupin, but the accomplice in flesh and blood, who lives and moves within the confines of this house. Let me secure the slightest clue, and the game is mine." That clue was furnished to him by accident. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, when he entered a room located above the boudoir, which served as a study for the children, he found Henriette, the younger of the 2 sisters. She was looking for her scissors.
"You know," she said to Sholmes, "I make papers like that you received the other evening."
"The other evening?"
"Yes, just as dinner was over, you received a paper with marks on it. You know, a telegram. Well, I make them too."
She left the room. To anyone else, these words would seem to be nothing more than the insignificant remark of a child. And Sholmes himself listened to them with a distracted air and continued his investigation. But suddenly, he ran after the child and overtook her at the head of the stairs. He said to her, "So, you paste stamps and marks on papers?" Henriette very proudly replied,
"Yes, I cut them out and paste them on."
"Who taught you that little game?"
"Mademoiselle, my governess. I have seen her do it often. She takes words out of the newspapers and pastes them."
What does she make out of them?
Telegrams and letters that she sends away.
Herlock Sholmes returned to the study, greatly puzzled by the information, and seeking to draw from it a logical deduction. There was a pile of newspapers on the mantel. He opened them and found that many words, and in some places entire lines, had been cut out. But after reading a few of the words which preceded or followed, he decided that the missing words had been cut out at random, probably by the child. It was possible that one of the newspapers had been cut by Mademoiselle, but how could he assure himself that such was the case? Mechanically, Sholmes turned over the school books on the table, then others which were lying on the shelf of a bookcase. Suddenly, he uttered a cry of joy. In a corner of the bookcase, under a pile of old exercise books, he found a child's alphabet book, in which the letters were ornamented with pictures, and on one of the pages of that book he discovered a place where a word had been removed. He examined it. It was a list of the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. The word Saturday was missing. Now, the theft of the Jewish lamp had occurred on a Saturday night. Sholmes experienced that slight fluttering of the heart which always announced to him in the clearest manner that he had discovered the road which leads to victory. That ray of truth, that feeling of certainty, never deceived him. With nervous fingers, he hastened to examine the balance of the book. Very soon he made another discovery. It was a page composed of capital letters, followed by a line of figures. 9 of those letters and 3 of those figures had been carefully cut out. Sholmes made a list of the missing letters and figures in his memorandum book, in alphabetical and numerical order, and obtained the following result. CDEHNOPEZ 237. Well, at first sight, it is a rather formidable puzzle, he murmured. But by transposing the letters and using all of them, is it possible to form 1, 2, or 3 complete words? Sholmes tried it in vain. Only one solution seemed possible. It constantly appeared before him no matter which way he tried to juggle the letters, until at length he was satisfied it was the true solution, since it harmonized with the logic of the facts and the general circumstances of the case. As that page of the book did not contain any duplicate letters, it was possible, in fact quite certain, that the words he could form from those letters would be incomplete, and that the original words had been completed with letters taken from other pages. Under those conditions, he obtained the following solution, errors and omissions accepted. Répond Z CH 237. The first word was quite clear. Répondez, reply. A letter E is missing because it occurs twice in the word, and the book furnished only one letter of each kind. As to the second incomplete word, no doubt it formed, with the aid of the number 237, an address to which the reply was to be sent. They appointed Saturday as the time, and requested a reply to be sent to the address CH237. Or perhaps CH237 was an address for a letter to be sent to the general delivery of some post office, or again, they might form a part of some incomplete word. Sholmes searched the book once more, but did not discover that any other letters had been removed. Therefore, until further orders, he decided to adhere to the foregoing interpretation. Henriette returned and observed what he was doing.
Amusing, isn't it?
Yes, very amusing, he replied. But have you any other papers? Or rather words already cut out that I can paste?
Papers? No, and Mademoiselle wouldn't like it.
Mademoiselle?
Yes, she has scolded me already.
Why?
Because I have told you some things, and she says that a person should never tell things about those they love.
You are quite right. Henriette was delighted to receive his approbation, in fact so highly pleased that she took from a little silk bag that was pinned to her dress some scraps of cloth, 3 buttons, 2 cubes of sugar, and lastly a piece of paper which she handed to Sholmes.
See, I give it to you just the same.
It was the number of a cab, 8279. Where did this number come from?
It fell out of her pocketbook.
When?
Sunday at Mass, when she was taking out some sous for the collection.
Exactly. And now I shall tell you how to keep from being scolded again. Do not tell mademoiselle that you saw me." Sholmes then went to Monsieur d'Ambleval and questioned him in regard to mademoiselle. The Baron replied indignantly,
"Alice Dumont, how can you imagine such a thing? It is utterly impossible."
"How long has she been in your service?"
"Only a year, but there is no one in the house in whom I have greater confidence."
"Why have I not seen her yet?"
"She has been away for a few days."
"But she is here now?"
"Yes, since her return she has been watching at the bedside of your friend. She has all the qualities of a nurse, gentle, thoughtful. Monsieur Wilson seems much pleased."
"Ah," said Sholmes, who had completely neglected to inquire about his friend. After a moment's reflection, he asked, "Did she go out on Sunday morning?"
"The day after the theft?"
"Yes." The Baron called his wife and asked her. She replied,
"Mademoiselle went to the 11 o'clock mass with the children, as usual."
"But before that?"
"Before that? No. Let me see. I was so upset by the theft. But I remember now that on the evening before, she asked permission to go out on Sunday morning to see a cousin who was passing through Paris, I think. But surely you don't suspect her?"
"Of course not. But I would like to see her." He went to Wilson's room. A woman dressed in a grey cloth dress, as in the hospitals, was bending over the invalid, giving him a drink. When she turned her face, Sholmes recognized her as the young girl who had accosted him at the railway station. Alice Dumont smiled sweetly. Her great, serious, innocent eyes showed no sign of embarrassment. The Englishman tried to speak, muttered a few syllables, and stopped. Then she resumed her work, acting quite naturally under Sholmes's astonished gaze, moved the bottles, unrolled the rolled cotton bandages, and again regarded Sholmes with her charming smile of pure innocence. He turned on his heels, descended the stairs, noticed Monsieur d'Ambleval's automobile in the courtyard, jumped into it, and went to Louvain, to the office of the cab company, whose address was printed on the paper he had received from Henriette. The man who had driven carriage number 8279 on Sunday morning not being there, Sholmes dismissed the automobile and waited for the man's return. He told Sholmes that he had picked up a woman in the vicinity of the Parc Monceau, a young woman dressed in black, wearing a heavy veil and apparently quite nervous. "Did she have a package?"
"Yes, quite a long package."
"Where did you take her?"
"Avenue des Ternes, corner of the place St. Ferdinand. She remained there about 10 minutes, and then returned to the Parc Monceau."
"Could you recognize the house in the Avenue des Ternes?"
"Parbleu! Shall I take you there?"
"Presently. First, take me to 36 Quai des Orfèvres." At the police office, he saw Detective Ganimard. "Monsieur Ganimard, are you at liberty?"
"If it has anything to do with Lupin, no."
"It has something to do with Lupin."
"Then I do not go."
"What? You surrender?"
"I bow to the inevitable. I am tired of the unequal struggle in which we are sure to be defeated. Lupin is stronger than I am, stronger than the two of us. Therefore, we must surrender."
"I will not surrender."
"He will make you, as he has all others."
"And you would be pleased to see it, Ganimard?"
"At all events, it is true,"
said Ganimard frankly.
"And since you are determined to pursue the game, I will go with you."
Together they entered the carriage and were driven to the Avenue des Ternes. Under their order, the carriage stopped on the other side of the street, at some distance from the house, in front of a little café, on the terrace of which the two men took seats amongst the shrubbery. It was commencing to grow dark. "Waiter," said Sholmes, "some writing material." He wrote a note, recalled the waiter, and gave him the letter with instructions to deliver it to the concierge of the house which he pointed out. In a few minutes the concierge stood before them. Sholmes asked him if, on the Sunday morning, he had seen a young woman dressed in black.
"In black? Yes, about 9 o'clock. She went to the second floor."
"Have you seen her often?"
"No, but for some time. Well, during the last few weeks, I have seen her almost every day."
"And since Sunday?"
"Only once, until today."
"What? Did she come today?"
"She is here now."
"Here now?"
"Yes, she came about 10 minutes ago.
Her carriage is standing in the Place St. Ferdinand as usual. I met her at the door." "Who is the occupant of the second floor?" "There are two, a modiste, Mademoiselle Langeais, and a gentleman who rented 2 furnished rooms a month ago under the name of Bresson." "Why do you say under the name?" "Because I have an idea that it is an assumed name. My wife takes care of his rooms, and, well, there are not 2 shirts there with the same initials." "Is he there much of the time?" "No, he is nearly always out. He has not been here for 3 days." "Was he here on Saturday night?" "Saturday night? Let me think. Yes, Saturday night. He came in and stayed all night." "What sort of man is he?" "Well, I can scarcely answer that. He is so changeable. He is by turns big, little, fat, thin, dark and light. I do not always recognize him." Ganimard and Sholmes exchanged looks. "That is he, all right," said Ganimard. "Ah," said the concierge. "There is the girl now." Mademoiselle had just emerged from the house and was walking toward her carriage in the Place St. Ferdinand. "And there is Monsieur Bresson." "Monsieur Bresson? Which is he?" "The man with the parcel under his arm." "But he is not looking after the girl. She is going to her carriage alone." "Yes, I have never seen them together." The 2 detectives had arisen. By the light of the street lamps, they recognized the form of Arsene Lupin, who had started off in a direction opposite to that taken by the girl. "Which will you follow?" asked Ganimard. "I will follow him, of course. He's the biggest game." "Then I will follow the girl," proposed Ganimard. "No, no," said Sholmes quickly, who did not wish to disclose the girl's identity to Ganimard. "I know where to find her. Come with me." They followed Lupin at a safe distance, taking care to conceal themselves as well as possible amongst the moving throng and behind the newspaper kiosks. They found the pursuit an easy one, as he walked steadily forward without turning to the right or left, but with a slight limp in the right leg, so slight as to require the keen eye of a professional observer to detect it. Ganimard observed it and said, "He is pretending to be lame. Ah, if we could only collect 2 or 3 policemen and pounce on our man, we run a chance to lose him." But they did not meet any policemen before they reached the Porte d'Étain, and having passed the fortifications, there was no prospect of receiving any assistance. "We had better separate," said Sholmes, "as there are so few people on the street." They were now on the boulevard Victor Hugo. They walked one on each side of the street, and kept well in the shadow of the trees. They continued thus for 20 minutes, when Lupin turned to the left and followed the Seine. Very soon they saw him descend to the edge of the river. He remained there only a few seconds, but they could not observe his movements. Then Lupin retraced his steps. His pursuers concealed themselves in the shadow of a gateway. Lupin passed in front of them. His parcel had disappeared. And as he walked away, another man emerged from the shelter of a house and glided amongst the trees. "He seems to be following him also," said Sholmes in a low voice. The pursuit continued, but was now embarrassed by the presence of the third man. Lupin returned the same way, passed through the Portes d'Étain, and re-entered the house in the Avenue d'Étain. The concierge was closing the house for the night when Ganimard presented himself. "Did you see him?" "Yes," replied the concierge. "I was putting out the gas on the landing when he closed and bolted his door." "Is there any person with him?" "No, he has no servant. He never eats here." "Is there a servant's stairway?" "No." Ganimard said to Sholmes, "I had better stand at the door of his room while you go to the commissary of police in the Rue des Monts." "And if he should escape during that time?" said Sholmes. "While I am here, he can't escape." 1-to-1 with Lupin, it's not an even chance for you." "Well, I can't force the door. I have no right to do that, especially at night." Sholmes shrugged his shoulders and said, "When you arrest Lupin, no one will question the methods by which you made the arrest. However, let us go up and ring, and see what happens then." They ascended to the second floor. There was a double door at the left of the landing. Ganimard rang the bell. No reply. He rang again. Still no reply. "Let us go in," said Sholmes.
"All right, come on,"
replied Ganimard. Yet they stood still, irresolute. Like people who hesitate when they ought to accomplish a decisive action, they feared to move, and it seemed to them impossible that Arsene Lupin was there, so close to them, on the other side of that fragile door that could be broken down by one blow of the fist. But they knew Lupin too well to suppose that he would allow himself to be trapped in that stupid manner. No, 1,000 times no. Lupin was no longer there. Through the adjoining houses, over the roofs, by some conveniently prepared exit, he must have already made his escape, and once more it would be only Lupin's shadow that they would seize. They shuddered as a slight noise coming from the other side of the door reached their ears. Then they had the impression, amounting almost to a certainty, that he was there, separated from them by that frail wooden door, and that he was listening to them, that he could hear them. What was to be done? The situation was a serious one. In spite of their vast experience as detectives, they were so nervous and excited that they thought they could hear the beating of their own hearts. Ganimard questioned Sholmes by a look. Then he struck the door a violent blow with his fist. Immediately they heard the sound of footsteps, concerning which there was no attempt at concealment. Ganimard shook the door. Then he and Sholmes, uniting their efforts, rushed to the door and burst it open with their shoulders. Then they stood still in surprise. A shot had been fired in the adjoining room. Another shot, and the sound of a falling body. When they entered, they saw the man lying on the floor, with his face toward the marble mantel. His revolver had fallen from his hand. Ganimard stooped and turned the man's head. The face was covered with blood, which was flowing from 2 wounds, one in the cheek and the other in the temple.
"You can't recognize him for the blood."
"No matter," said Sholmes. "It is not Lupin."
"How do you know? You haven't even looked at him."
"Do you think that Arsene Lupin is the kind of man that would kill himself?" asked Sholmes with a sneer.
"But we thought we recognized him outside."
"We thought so because the wish was father to the thought. That man has us bewitched."
"Then it must be one of his accomplices."
"The accomplices of Arsene Lupin do not kill themselves."
"Well then, who is it?"
They searched the corpse. In one pocket, Herlock Sholmes found an empty pocketbook. In the other, Ganimard found several louis. There were no marks of identification on any part of his clothing. In a trunk and 2 valises, they found nothing but wearing apparel. On the mantel, there was a pile of newspapers. Ganimard opened them. All of them contained articles referring to the theft of the Jewish lamp. An hour later, when Ganimard and Sholmes left the house, they had acquired no further knowledge of the strange individual who had been driven to suicide by their untimely visit. Who was he? Why had he killed himself? What was his connection with the affair of the Jewish lamp? Who had followed him on his return from the river? The situation involved many complex questions, many mysteries. Herlock Sholmes went to bed in a very bad humor. Early next morning, he received the following telephonic message. "Arsene Lupin has the honor to inform you of his tragic death in the person of Monsieur Bresson, and requests the honor of your presence at the funeral service and burial, which will be held at the public expense on Thursday, 25 June. Well, can you imagine getting a telephonic message that said that? I love telephonic messages. It just really places this book where it needs to be. So, yeah, are you enjoying this book? I would love to hear from you. Get in touch, anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com. You can also just go to Another World Audiobooks, and there's a bunch of different ways to get in touch through social media. One of the best ways, though, to let me know your feedback on the show is to leave a review. So whatever podcast player you're listening to these days, it used to be all about Apple Podcasts back when it was on iTunes, but now there's all kinds of different players and stuff people listen to. I know Spotify is a big one for a lot of people. So if you're loving the show, just drop a review. It helps other people find the show and helps us continue to grow so that I can continue to bring you awesome audiobooks. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a wonderful week. We'll catch you next time.